Dana grew up in boxing gyms in Boston. He had boxing gyms, and was essentially forced out by the mob. And Dana is joining us. He is, I call you a commissioner. You're a maverick. You have now created the wildly profitable and successful UFC. I want you to go back and tell our audience this story. We know about Whitey Bulger. There's a new movie out called Black Mass with, I think, Johnny Depp is the lead guy.
Right.
So you had gyms. You had boxing gyms in Boston.
I had one. Yeah. We ran my partner and I, Peter, we ran a Get Kids Off the Street program back there. And we used to teach, boxing classes. However we could make money, we made money. So one day I was teaching a class in one of the big clubs in South Boston, and these two guys walked into the class and said, "Hey, we need to talk to you." At first, I'm thinking, "Is this guy? Does he own the club or whatever?" We go out, and when he asked me, "Do you know who I am?" That was when I realized what was going on, and basically said, "You owe us money." It's like $2,500, which was like 25,000 to me back then, and said, "You owe us money."
And you didn't owe money. It was just that's the way the mob worked,
right? Yeah, it was actually a guy named Kevin Weeks, who, if you saw the trial, was Whitey's right-hand man. And I'm sure he's very prominent in the movie. But, basically said I owed him some money, and I didn't pay him. And, this went on for a while. And one day I was at my place, and I got a call, and they said, "You owe us the money tomorrow by, 1 o'clock.
This is Kevin Weeks, who was the Sammy the Bull to Gotti. He was the right-hand man.
Yeah, he was his right-hand man.
For Whitey Bulger.
I literally hung up the phone, picked the phone back up, and called Delta. Bought a ticket to Vegas.
And
that was it.
And moved.
Yeah, I literally left everything there. I packed a bag and left all my stuff in Boston.
Went to Vegas, opened another gym, boxing gym.
Right.
The MMA, the UFC, whatever it was called, did not exist. Then
it did. No, the UFC existed, but the UFC was,
infancy.
Yeah, those guys were in trouble, and I was involved in boxing, and I started to one night Frank Fertitta, one of my friends, and Lorenzo Fertitta, we were out and we met these UFC guys, and Frank said, "I've always wanted to learn ground fighting. I've always wanted to learn jiu-jitsu." So we set up an appointment for Monday, and we started taking jiu-jitsu and fell in love with it. We became addicted to it. We started training 3 or 4 days a week, and then through that, the guy, John Lewis, who we were training with, knew lots of fighters, so we started to meet some of these guys, and we were blown away by these UFC guys. Really intelligent guys, super athletic, and it was fascinating. And I started to manage Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz at the time. I created these relationships with these guys and started to manage them. And through that, I found out that the UFC was in trouble and they were going out of business. And Lorenzo Fertitta and I had always said we were going to do something together in the fight game, but we always thought it would be boxing. And when I found out that the UFC was in trouble, I called those guys. They were actually in Miami at the time. And I said, "Guys, I think the UFC is going out of business. I think we could buy it." A month later, we bought the UFC for $2 million.
Now think about that. That is unbelievable. You can't buy a house near the water. You can't buy a tear down. You bought a sport for $2 million.
You're a CIO in